You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Mark Reed and Ted Durden, only on LA Talk Radio.
Good evening, and welcome to another edition of The Voice of Reason. My name is Ted Durden. I'm a Southern Democrat.
And I'm Mark Reed, a West Coast Republican.
And together we are The Voice of Reason. For those of you tuning in for the very first time, this is a politically motivated podcast where civil discourse is the order of the day. Where Mark and I discover we have more things that unite us than we do that divide us. And as I do every week, after that, I toss the ball over to my co-host, Mark Reed.
Sorry for the late start, you guys. We had a little bit of technical difficulties, but we're going to go to 8:10, so we're going to have a full hour of the show. As most of you have been watching, the coronavirus is the topic of the day. It's wall-to-wall coverage from one channel to the next. You're seeing a lot of information thrown out there, a lot of misinformation, but one of the biggest controversies I think we keep seeing is the far left continually attacking President Trump for the way in which he's handling the coronavirus. And the Democrats, including Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi, they want to pull out a full-on investigation of how he has bungled it. And most everybody forgets that in January 14th, he was being impeached. In December, he was going through impeachment. February, he was going through impeachment. And he was being given reports from December to January that there was a possible problem from his intel agencies. And in January, it was confirmed, and he shut off all incoming flights from China. The far left immediately labeled him as a racist again and labeled him as xenophobic and sat there and slammed him for it. And anybody who's ever dealt with or worked with the federal government, it goes at a frozen molasses pace. Everything that he's accomplished in the 6 weeks since the virus has been identified in the United States has been at breakneck speed. He's gotten the private industries together with the government agencies. He's used the Defense Production Act quite well with GM and a lot of other companies to produce all of the medical needed supplies for our hospitals and our first responders. And I have to give a shout out to all of them. They're doing an unbelievable job.
Absolutely.
My sister's a nurse, my cousin's a nurse, and they handle quite a few different patients. And that takes a lot of courage to get out there and handle people that that has a virus that you can get and there's no cure for. However, in this breakneck speed that I was talking about, you're looking at different cures, not really cures, but treatments that are being tested now. And you're looking at a vaccine that's being tested now for next year's round of this coronavirus that will come back around again during the flu season, I'm sure. But you're also looking at treatments that are being successfully implemented on a bunch of patients at this point, and it looks very promising. But I want to get more to the root of what is really going on. I kind of laughed and joked about it a little bit before about remember I said for the conspiracy theorists out there is what's going on. As it's unfolding, it's not such a wacky idea, is it, Ted?
No, I don't think that it is. I'm going to chime on a couple of things that you said.
Well, let me go ahead and finish this. I haven't finished with my opening comments. I was just getting you to chime in there because I brought my Republican re-registration slips for you too today.
Well, you might not like what I had to say, but go ahead.
But if you look at exactly what's taken place, this crew was started in Wuhan. We don't know if it was laboratory or we don't know if it was wildlife. We know actually it wasn't from the wet markets out there.
Right.
That it just came about. They still don't have evidence of patient zero.
Right.
Another thing that we definitely know of is both Beijing and what's the other?
Hong Kong.
Not Hong Kong.
Not Hong Kong.
No, Beijing and what's the other major city? Shanghai. There we go. I had to go to my guest to get the other city. I did a little Rick Perry right there. Okay, but Shanghai and I'm going blank. Beijing and Shanghai. They were both basically insulated. They had less than 500, recorded cases with less than 20 people passing away from it. There's been reports now that out of Wuhan, there's been approximately 43,000 people who have died, not the small number that they're talking about. They underreported everything. But the major issues in China is that their manufacturing was completely insulated and protected. They're up at 85% to 90% of manufacturing now. You look at the world. The world is now this virus has been unleashed on the world. We're going through the high points of it. We're reporting, and we're documenting everything because we want to get a handle on this virus. We want to kill it. We want to get rid of it because it's going to kill a bunch of people if we're not on top of it. But you look at now China's interest. You have several companies out there that their stock has gone up 400%.
Right.
You look at Tesla, you look at Apple, you look at any of the medical industries that are supplying the world, not just the United States, but the world with medical supplies and medications. Their stock is going through the roof. On the overall balance, China's stock is at about a 3% plus because they're still getting back on their feet. The world is not going to get back on their feet for another 3 months to 4 months and up to full production and buying. So you look at it and you really, really got to think, did China do this completely on purpose? Does China, the Chinese Communist Party, do they care about the Chinese people? No, they don't. They care about one thing, and that is the power of China in its manufacturing ability. There was a book written by two generals before President Xi took a power of China, and it talked about the Chinese, the country of China, that it would not and could not win a military battle in dominancy of the world, that the only way that they can create dominance is by their economic prowess and leveraging that prowess. And they've done so quite well by unleashing this virus. Now, if you look at President Trump, as the first president of the last four presidents that has looked at China and said, no more. You're not going to be taking advantage of the United States. You're not going to have this trade imbalance. You're not going to steal intellectual property. We're going to create a balanced trade for the world, not just the United States, but for the world. But unknowingly, America did not realize how much, the average person in America did not realize how much they were dependent upon the supply chains. We did a couple episodes on the supply chain issues, and we did a couple episodes about how national security is tied to it. This is what's going to be the focus, is the retooling of the complete economic powerhouse in manufacturing within the United States. How much of it will have to come back to the U.S.? How much of the labor force is going to be readjusted pertaining to how much they're going to get paid? If you remember in President Obama's tenure, his administration, and when Joe Biden was the head of the liaison to China in its manufacturing, over 90,000 scientists lost their jobs on the East Coast. They were paid, their starting pay was about $95,000. It went up to about $250,000. They went ahead and shipped all of the manufacturing of generic drugs to China. Their scientists over there starting pay is about $15,000. They may make up to $25,000. Unbelievable to me. This has been giving up American security for decades now, and we're just now addressing it. Our guest tonight is the Dr. Wen Chen, and she's going to talk about some of these supply chain issues. There's a three-tiered supply chain, even in China itself, and how abusive it is to the average Chinese person versus the kind of the middle, we would call the middle class, versus the elite within the Chinese Communist Party. But with that, I think we really need to look at exactly what the issues are. We actually have a call that's come in, so let's go ahead and take the call real quick. Jack? Hello, you're on the Voice of Reason. Can you say your name, where you're calling from?
Yes, this is Will from Long Beach, California.
Hello,
How you
Will.
doing, Will?
Ted and Mark, first of all, any bipartisan effort that starts out the way you guys have done, inevitably there's going to be technical difficulties. So don't beat yourselves up over that. Secondly, you brought up a good point on President Trump. I have been an opponent of the president for the last 3 years. I think he's handling the job better than any president could have done or should have done, by the way. We're talking about 3 past administrations that had the opportunity and the intelligence and the warning to set up for this moment. And so I think he's doing well. Keep in mind, and don't be afraid to ask your doctor, your guest when she comes on, but influenza equals a virus. There's no cure. Herpes equals a virus, and there's no cure. So we need to brace up. We need to stay at home. We need to be vigilant. And I salute both of you, Ted and Mark alike, for bringing this venue to the forefront.
Well,
thank you, and God bless you.
Well,
right,
thank you very much.
He brings up a good point. There's 10 top diseases in America. 2.8 million plus people die from these 10 top diseases every year in America, just in America alone. So when you look at this, the more of the fear is being generated by the press of what is the unknown. We don't know what this virus is. We don't know how it attacks. We don't know its genetic makeup. We don't know where it came from. And we are all, in America, I would say we're all a little bit of control freaks. Okay, and this is why the whole hysteria is going on. You know, we're used to going to the market, getting our food, whatever we want. We kind of shop around. Yeah, now it's all limited. We don't even get to go walking around the streets anymore.
I think where the fear factor comes in is because of the way that this disease is contracted. Because of the fact that you're right, there are still some unknown factors about it. Because right now, as far as the scientific community is concerned, it's transmitted by touch. It can be transmitted airborne manner, but only if primarily if they're coughing or if someone is sneezing, if there are wet particulates that the other person can inhale. A friend and I had a discussion about breathing, and he brought up the point that, but your breath has moisture because if you breathe on the mirror, there's moisture there. I said, this is true. However, that's where social distancing comes into importance because of the fact that when you breathe out, if someone is 6 feet from you, then you cannot contact anything because your breath and the moisture will have dissipated. Now, they still do not know if the coronavirus remains in the air at this point, but most scientific data is lending to the fact that it does not. So I don't think, as long as we're wearing masks, as long as we maintain social distancing, if we're wearing plastic gloves, making sure surfaces are cleaned, I think we're going to be fine. I'm going to touch on a couple of things that Mark said at the beginning. Is he correct that Trump was being burdened with that political folly of being impeached? It shouldn't have happened. Period. The only thing I would disagree about is at his rallies when the virus first came out, he called it a Democratic hoax. He indicated that it's not that serious. It's not even as bad as the flu.
Wait.
Let me finish. No, Mark,
I'm going to correct you on that. He didn't call the coronavirus a hoax.
No, he did. He called it Mark. Yes, he did. I can bring it up. I can bring it up a video. He called it a Democratic hoax. He called it something that was being perpetrated by the liberal media. That it wasn't that serious. Now the difference between the one thing I'll say about Trump is this, is that
you're wrong.
Even Mitch McConnell came in and said because Trump was distracted by the impeachment proceedings. Right. Now that may be true, but if you think back to when Bill Clinton was in office, while he was being impeached, he still conducted the government's business. Now, once Trump got things going, he was a hell of fire, and I'll give him that. He took the steps that should have been done, and he continues to do so to this date. But I will say he was a little slow out the gate. But once he got it going, he got it going. Now, going to the conspiracy as far as China unleashing this virus, I'm going to lend credence to that because it seems awfully coincidental that this occurs within about a year of Trump stepping up and putting the heat on China regarding the trade imbalance. It seems awfully coincidental that it occurs at about that time.
In September, they had a practice in one of the airports of a virus being unleashed in Wuhan. Bill Gates was there in 2015 talking about viruses and so forth. But I want to get back to the thing.
Let me finish making a couple of points.
Go right.
I do find it suspect that two of the most popular cities in China, being Beijing and Shanghai, did not have that many cases and did not have that many deaths. I find it very interesting and very odd that it attacked the Wuhan province and other outlying areas. To me, that's odd because that's why New York got hit so hard. That's why Italy got hit so hard.
What time of year was it, too, over there? It was the Chinese New Year.
It was the Chinese
and
New
you had
Year,
a
right.
bunch of tourists and family that
Right.
came back. As soon as they found out about the virus, they escaped.
Right.
More of them escaped because when the doctor and I had a conversation about this, quarantine in China is not like a quarantine in America.
No,
Quarantine in America, you get some medical help. They quarantine you in a hospital. In China, you quarantine in your apartment and then keep you locked up in there until you die or starve to death.
Right, yeah, you get
One
no
of the
no
two.
assistance
Yeah.
whatsoever.
So the truth of it is the brutality of the Chinese Communist Party is pretty much known. It's going to be documented after all of this dust settles down.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but going back to the thing that I started to kind of not argue with you about, but disagree with about strongly,
Right.
is that he called the reaction to the coronavirus by the Democrat is the new hoax. He wasn't calling the virus itself a hoax. The virus was real. The virus was being looked at by, he appointed a couple of individuals in
Right.
CDC to address it. He had them come into the Oval Office and in beginning of January to discuss it and give them reports on it. That's why in the middle of January, when he got the reports, they were not recommending him to stop the travel.
Well, let me ask you. I need you to clarify.
He is on his own.
But let
came
me
out and
have you
stopped
clarify
it.
something. When you
Yes.
said he called the Democratic response a hoax,
Response a
when you
hoax.
say the response, can you elaborate on that for me?
Well, remember in the beginning they were saying that he created it. There was Democrats out there saying that
They said that Trump
that
created it.
Trump created the virus.
Oh,
And,
I didn't hear that.
oh yeah, no,
Are you
that was.
serious?
I'm serious. That
Oh
it
my
went out
God.
there. I mean,
I
some of
didn't hear
the
that.
stuff
I
is
did
so
not hear that.
bizarre out there that it just boggles your brain.
That he
how
created
how
the
the
virus.
media can come out here. It's worse than the lamestream media. This is outright hypocrisy, lying, deceitful, and treasonous. The way they're handling things, because, like I said, if you look at what has taken place in 6 weeks since the middle of January to now, it's unbelievable what's happening. Now, I deal with the government quite a bit. Let me tell you, I was laughing with a gal today. I said, yeah, it's easier to go out to Staples and buy yourself a box of paper clips than it is to try to get a requisition from the government to get a box of Staples for your office. It'd take you a year and a half. You might as well just walk down to the local Staples store and buy them and bring them in there. The government does not work at breakneck speed. It will, though, on cases like this when you have true leadership. Now, there's been a lot of governors that have come out and complimented President Trump heavily. Cuomo has come out and complimented, but he's kind of backlashed back and
Yeah,
forth.
well, he also got busted on the whole ventilator thing,
Well,
too.
yeah, and at this point, they're talking about him coming in on the national convention and becoming the Democrat nominee.
Who, Cuomo?
Yep.
Oh, get out.
And oh yeah, no, they are. It's
Get
heavy.
outta
It's heavy
here.
conversation about
Please.
this. And so now he's being caught on all of his hypocrisies and lies that have been going on. That he has mismanaged the budget of New York. His own health department in New York in February, the end of February, were telling all New Yorkers, it's not a big deal. Just go out and continue your lives the way it is. We have a handle on this. It's not going to be a pandemic. It's not a big thing. This is why New York
That's
is
what
really being.
he said.
No, this is what his head of the health department in New York
Wow.
said. Not the federal, the state. Okay? They came out, the gal came out and said, look, just keep your lives going the way they are. Don't worry about it. We got a handle on this. This is why New York is the heaviest hit. And you got New Jersey and was it Connecticut next to it?
Right. Well, see,
Right.
I just felt that that New York made sense because New York is you have a lot of people in a small area, and so you have people living on top of each other. And it's my opinion. Plus, they have a large population of elderly, and I believe that is why they got so hard hit, because the level of human contact there, even if you look at the subways, the way that they're crowded, that doesn't surprise me.
No.
It doesn't surprise me whatsoever.
Well, your major transportation hubs and import and export hubs is you have New York, you have Manhattan there on the Hudson, and then you got Washington, who got hit heavily in Washington in the beginning. You got
Right.
major ports there.
Now you got
And a lot-
Louisiana. Now Louisiana's coming
Louisiana, the same
online.
thing.
Right.
You got shipping routes in through there. Then you got Los Angeles, and this is why they're anticipating Los Angeles. But I really think there's so many reports coming out right now that all the hospitals in Los Angeles, they're going, there's no customers because there's nobody on the roads right now. So they don't have accidents. They don't have beatings going on. They don't have anything going on. The emergency rooms are clear. they overestimated the response of the coronavirus. Nobody's showing up. The hospitals are empty. They have all kinds of tents and everything outside of Kaiser Permanente Hospital in Woodland Hills.
I've heard just the opposite. I've heard just the opposite.
They came on KBC radio. Some of the administrators of the hospitals. I guess it all depends on where you're at, because if you look at the LA County hub, the information hub, you have them heavy in Tarzana, Woodland Hills, West Hills. You have them over in Bel Air, Brentwood. There's a lot of cases in Glendale. There's different pockets where the cases are at, but there's still, you're talking only 1,700 cases in LA County.
And I agree with you because of the fact that LA City probably has a higher volume, because LA City, like New York, like San Francisco, those are heavily congested areas. If you look at the outlying areas, you look at Riverside, look at San Bernardino, where the community is more sparse, where it's more spread out. You don't have that many. You don't have that many cases. No. You don't have that many deaths. I think San Bernardino and Riverside, I might be mixing up the two. I think one has 6, one has 5.
Well, you look at the death rate in Italy; it's 10%. Look at the death rate across the United States, it's 1.8%, or it's 0.0. Somebody was correcting me on this. It's 0.0181%. Okay, but still, that number is going to go down because, again, and we're going to kind of wrap this up if we can bring our guest on.
Right.
It goes into really the granular aspects of the data coming in. We do not have full data.
No.
We have not tested. There's only been about 1.5 million testing done in America of 360 million people.
Right.
Okay, so we have no clue how many people have been asymptomatic or walking around have had it, have recovered from it. We still don't have enough granular data about it. But the one thing out there that is definite, that the supposed professor from Cal State Northridge on my opponent's town hall that he did about the coronavirus, he didn't bring it up, that this virus is actually very volatile and weak. It is encircled by a fatty tissue inside where the virus is actually at. This is why washing your hands for 20 seconds with soap that bubbles out, getting in the nooks and crannies, take your rings off, go underneath your fingernails, wash the suckers. You know that? Because that is the primary transmission.
It's by touch.
It's not by sneezing. If someone sneezes right on you, even if you weren't sick, I'd slap them upside the head because it's just flat out rude. Okay? Sneezing in your hands. This is why, people will sneeze in their hands. It's kind of a habit.
Right.
Then they touch things.
Right.
I was taught when I was a kid, when you go out into the public, you don't grab handrails, you don't lick your fingers, you wash your hands constantly. It's just natural hygiene in public.
Hand sanitizer.
You get home. I never even used I don't even get the flu because running for office, I've always had a strong practice, okay, of I'm shaking people's hands constantly. I'm around people all the time. I can't afford to get sick.
Right.
So I don't touch my mouth, my eyes, and that if I'm around a lot of people. I just don't. It's habit. After an event, I go in, I wash my hands all the time. I wash them, okay, hot water and soap. I don't get sick. Okay, now from tomorrow I'm going to get sick. Watch this.
Hopefully not, Mark.
But they don't talk about the volatility of the particular virus, and it can be stopped in its tracks by social distancing, washing your hands. If you're sick, bring a neckerchief around with you, sneeze in the neckerchief, sneeze in your arm, cough in your arm, whatever. Don't share. It's not worth sharing.
Right.
Because you may end up killing somebody that you really love, somebody's grandparents, or somebody that has some kind of chronic illnesses as well. So on that, we're going to pay our bills, and we're going to welcome Dr. Wen Ju back onto the show. And welcome, Doctor, back to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here. Do the chicken wing here, like that.
Right.
And you heard our opening comments and statements. I wanted to talk a little bit about the supply chain issue within China itself, because you have about 90,000, I believe, members within the Communist Party itself that are actually official members. But even in there, you have an elite group that get, as you were talking pre-show, they get products that are manufactured especially for them. There's no signs on it, no where it came from, anything, but it's just a special product. Tell us a little bit about that hierarchy there of the supply chain just for the people of China, kind of the middle class and the lower level, the Communist Party members, and the upper level.
Yeah, China has a long history about the Communist Party. They have different social class. It's very funny, right? Because we think about the communists like they are supposed to be equal. But it was never equal.
I was never taught that. The communism is horrible.
Well, you can say all animals are equal. Some animals are more equal than others, right? Like that's the reality.
Right.
Like since the very beginning of the Chinese Communist Party, the top level officials, they always get special supplies.
Of course.
Like we're talking about China as a very, very polluted country. Like China's air pollution is very bad.
Oh, it's horrible.
And China's water pollution is so bad that there's, according to international standards, there's no clean water in China. So China created its own water standard. But those are just for everyday people, okay? Like we're talking about the very, very top level official like Xi Jinping. And he, people like him don't eat everyday people's food. Like they have special farms to produce not contaminated food for them. And like everything you can imagine in your daily life, they get a special supply. Like we're talking about those food with no label. And I have seen some of them before, like as gifts, like, some of my relatives from China gave me something like these are very, very top quality, like a priceless tea. I mean, there was no label. You cannot find where they were produced. You cannot find you can't make a call to say, where can I buy more of this?
Right.
So these are for the elite class. Like they drink everything, like bottled water, like everything, special supply. And those are the top quality. And like for everyday people, like my parents, like my brother who live in China, they go to markets, they buy food, and basically every kind of food they bought, they were, more or less poisonous. Like we're talking about from the very beginning, the ingredients. Like we're talking about the chemical pollution,
right.
like poisonous rice, like fish, like raised with antibiotics, like all of this. Those were the worst quality food to Chinese people. But like those supplied to foreign countries, like those were sold to the U.S. are actually better than that. It's like in between, the middle level. Like because those food products sold to the United States or other countries, if they're too bad in quality, consumers would find them. Then China will lose the business.
Right.
And now, continue our topic about the medical supply, right? I've heard about all these countries with close tie with China. Let's just take Italy, for example, right? You just mentioned Italy has such a high death rate, 10% of the patients die. And I have been wondering about this since the very beginning. Why? Why do these countries have such a dramatic difference, in the death rate? And I came to one conclusion of 4 reasons. Number one reason, because they have a very close tie with the Communist Party in China, they believed in all the sayings, all the statistics provided by China. They believed the WHO that it was not a serious problem, so they were not prepared from the very beginning. When we talk about not prepared, that means for example, when the news first came out, Trump immediately ordered, we're going to close the border.
Right.
We block Chinese tourists from entering here. And then I feel such a big relief because we know in Los Angeles how many Chinese tourists came.
Oh, right.
Once you block them from coming in, we block the way the virus could spread to us. And the problem of Italy is that they didn't do that. They just stopped the flight, but the Chinese tourists still go there. And actually, as a matter of fact, in most of these European countries, the outbreak always started from sister cities with Chinese. Italy and France, all of these countries, the coronavirus all came from those cities with close ties to China because many Chinese tourists went there and many Chinese people live in those cities. And that's where they got started. And that's why.
Well, there's over 100,000 workers, Chinese workers in Italy.
Yeah, there's
and the
Is there
majority,
that many?
and a lot of them went to Wuhan during the Chinese New Year.
Yeah.
And when the outbreak started happening, they all left.
Yeah.
And so how many of them were actually asymptomatic? How much of it was actually already going? You know, we anticipate maybe it was the beginning of December. I almost project that it probably could have been in November.
Yeah,
They already
Could have
probably
been
before
a
earlier.
lot of
that.
asymptomatic in the younger groups.
Yeah.
And then you had everybody visiting for the new year, and then it gets identified because some people are dying.
Right.
They blocked it. 3 of the doctors in China that were bringing attention to it disappeared. The first 3 that actually talked about it, they're gone. Nobody knows where they're at.
Well,
right?
actually, the whistleblowers, I know Li Wenliang, one of them died in February.
Mm-hmm.
And the one, Ifen, the first doctor who discovered the report,
Right, he died.
you know,
excuse
about
me.
the second one, she got an interview on a Chinese magazine, Renwu magazine, and the interview was published on March 10th, and immediately the Chinese government removed the whole article from the whole internet, everything related to it, and she disappeared afterwards. You know what I
Right.
mean? Disappeared.
Yes.
And now let's go back to the topic about Italy, okay? First, these countries believed in what the Communist Party told them. They were totally unprepared. They just let the virus coming into their countries. And they were not paying attention to it because they thought it was not serious
Right.
until it was everywhere. And then they rely on the medical supplies from China, right? We're talking about test kits provided by China.
Right.
They were only 20 to 30% accurate, all right? Spain, had to return some of them because they were only 20% accurate.
Wow.
All right, when we talk about 20%, they are missing 80% of confirmed cases. How can they control the disease if
Right.
they don't even know who
has it?
Who has it? And then number 3, right? They took medical supplies from China, the face mask, the protection shoes. They're defective. They call it a substandard, okay, defective. And those face masks cannot protect the medical staff. And then the doctors got infected, nurses got infected. But these doctors and nurses, they took care of other patients,
Right.
and then
They're-
it was a
they're
They're
disaster.
they're the heroes in this.
Yeah, it became a disaster in this area, who have close tie to China. And then we talk about medicine produced in China, right? We talk about how China has all these poisonous food. What really shocked me was 2006, China was reported to have poisonous baby formula. About
I remember that one.
yeah, 250,000 babies, got affected. 6,000 of them died, but nobody got punished for that. Nobody took responsibility for that. And they can do that to baby formula. They can do the same thing to the medical supplies,
Right.
to the medicine, to the, we're talking about life-threatening diseases. People take medicine. They were made in China, and imagine those were defective.
Well, I remember that when you were here before, you said that in some of the medication that they manufactured, rocket fuel was found. So
Yeah, that was on our interview with Rosemary Gibson.
Oh,
It's
that's right,
the heart,
Rosemary
heart
Gibson.
medications, they found rocket fuel in there, but they've also found defective DNA in some of the medications that are coming in here that will alter the DNA of individuals. They stopped that actually at the border coming in. But it gets into, the World Health Organization was developed, I believe, in 1948. If I'm remembering my numbers right, 1948, and it was established to help create a standard for health and to prevent diseases. And they've been pretty good with a lot of stuff, but on this one, they've completely dropped the ball because China has corrupted the World Health Organization. And they came out in the beginning and were praising China's response to the virus and identifying it and locking down the city and everything else. And now they're backtracking that because they realize that China is the Iron Curtain. Real information is not coming out of there.
Right.
They've tried to deflect it on a number of occasions. And I think that, like I said, at the end of all of this, once everything gets settled down, we're going to find out the true impact that it had on the average Chinese people, the average Chinese citizen there. It did not impact the Communist Party. It didn't impact the upper middle class of China, but it really impacted the lower economic run of China. And the Chinese Communist Party doesn't care. If you can expand a little bit, I was discussing a little bit about the makeup of the virus itself and that it is volatile. Can you dispel some of the misinformation about the virus? We know for a fact that it is highly contagious. Okay, because with the influenza, one person will infect 9 people. With the coronavirus, one person will infect 45.
Right.
Those 45 will actually infect 2019. Those 2019, if they go out in the world and it's not caught, they're asymptomatic, that will infect 91,000 people. So it's extremely important. But the volatility of the actual virus, as I described, is a fatty outlier that surrounds it, and it breaks down in soap. This is why you wash your clothes. If you go out into the public, you get home, change your clothes, wash them up, wash your hands, wash your hair, you're good to go in your own house.
Right.
So if you can dispel a couple of the false informations about the virus that are out there and give everybody some solid information about how to deal with being outside, how to deal with people. Let's say somebody sneezes on you, what would be the first thing you do besides hitting them?
Well, I mean, I would walk away and then wash my hands, wash my face. But, sometimes I have to admit, sometimes it's unpredictable. We've seen people exposed to, it's just for example, people get, infected, just by walking by some confirmed cases, right? And people live with them may not get infected. So I would say the most important is your own immunity. And as a matter of fact, we are exposed to numerous viruses, numerous bacteria every day.
Every day.
Every single day. And so I would say if you make yourself extremely stressed, it's actually bad for you.
Right.
I mean, I noticed that during the past 3 weeks, because basically I was being at home, right? I just realized sometimes people are just hurting themselves by worrying too much.
Right.
When you worry too much, actually you put yourself into a stress, and we're in stress, and it's worse.
Stress is one of the number one killers.
Well, yeah, because not only that, when you stress too much, it actually, depending, of course, on the level or severity of it, it actually compromises your immune system. So you shouldn't be stressing out about this. You shouldn't be. Period.
Well, see, I'm a father. I have 3 adult children, and I have 10 grandchildren on the ground and 1 on its way. And the thing that my wife and I realize that emotional turmoil is one of the most energy draining, and it drops your immune systems down. You get sick at those times.
Sure does.
We're watching our own children with their children. When they get stressed out, they get sick easier.
Exactly.
And so with this virus that's out there, the simple things, the old things of just personal hygiene out there.
Yeah.
Because as Ted was talking about in the beginning, the droplets, I'm trying to remember, it's 5 centimeters. I think it has to be, it's a pretty good sized droplet that has to get into you. And it has to get inside of the mucous membranes of the nose and the mouth, and then start multiplying in there. So they're saying straight out that transmission isn't by casual walking by. It's more, I think they said it's up in the upper 90s. It's touch. It's touching stuff, because the virus lives how long on different surfaces?
Well, for days sometimes. I heard on plastic, they last for days.
Yes.
But as, let's go back to the topic. I just feel really we don't know too much about it, and we're taking we're doing what we can do. Okay, we've tried our best.
Right.
And if you continue to worry about it, it's only going to put yourself into more trouble. Because I've heard many cases people has been sitting at home for weeks, and they got it.
Well, yeah, because of the fact I know they've estimated that it could be as many as 25% of the American population could have it, but be asymptomatic.
Right.
And by the time this reaches the end, when I say the end, when we finally get up under control, there could be as many as 50% of the American population that are asymptomatic. And my understanding, like I said, we didn't know a whole lot about it, but there's a progression that it goes through, because it affects everybody differently. Because some people, they will only experience symptoms of a common cold, and then it will pass through. Anyone that has an underlying respiratory problem, because it is a respiratory illness, first and foremost. It attacks the lungs. That is what happens. So that is why anybody that has an underlying respiratory illness, severe as a general rule, I have one, I have asthma, but as long as you're practicing hygiene and safe distancing, you'll be fine. But if you do have an underlying issue, then yeah, if you contract it, it may spell bad news for you. But it does go through a natural progression. Some scientific data have indicated that as this disease moves along, our own body will create its own defense systems as a result thereof. And just like it does, not everybody catches the flu. Like not everybody caught SARS. Not everybody caught the swine flu, and that killed over 3 million people in a year worldwide. So I think as this thing progresses along, I want to touch on one other thing too. It's been rumored that there is a lupus medication out there called hydrochlorothiazide. I may be saying it wrong. That there has been a mad rush on it. One doctor came out and indicated that it may alleviate the symptoms or may cure the symptoms of COVID-19, and there has been a mad rush where you can't even find that anymore.
Well, this is where the President Trump and the Republicans in the Senate and the House, they passed the Right to Try Act. And the idea is that, if you're laying in a hospital bed and you're gasping for breath, because it's actually not the virus that kills you, it's your body's response to the virus that kills you because it fills the lungs up. Right. So that's why you got to be put on the respirator in order to pump oxygen into you and try to alleviate the problem. And they're talking about those two drugs that alleviate the problem and so you can recover, because I believe it was 80 people, 79 people didn't even have to go on a respirator. And the people that were on the respirators, the without any kind of a treatment or trying to treatment, they were on the respirators for 5.5 days with the drug that they're experimenting with right now. They were only on there for 3 days and recovered. So they're working on it. I mean, this is where I say with American ingenuity and trying, they're doing phenomenal things.
Absolutely, they are.
And this is where America comes together. It's not a Republican or Democrat issue.
No.
Because these doctors are working on it. You don't know if they're Republican or Democrat. They're just looking at this as a virus. I want to kill it.
Right.
We want to save lives. We want to save people. When I go to the hospital, I don't look at are you a Republican doctor?
Exactly.
I really don't care. My leg snapped in half. Can you fix it? That's all I care about. So this is where, the politicizing of it has been so ridiculous. And that's why I started off the conversation of this show that way. It's an insult to American ingenuity. It's also an insult to all of our professionals, doctors and nurses and scientists that are out there, because it's not a political thing to them. This is a virus that is going across the world. With that, we're going to go to another advertising because we do have to pay our bills here. We are not getting government subsidies for this show. So we'll see you on the other end of the thing.
This is the
Hi, I want to welcome Rusty Levin and Harry Nabanian, both trial lawyers for workman comp cases. If you're injured on the job, don't hesitate. Contact an attorney. I did when I was wounded or injured on my job, and I thought I would trust my employer, and it didn't work out quite well. So I found Rusty Levin, handled my case like a professional, worked out way better than any other lawyer that I talked to would have worked out. So Rusty, tell us a little bit about your company of Levin and Nabanian Trial Lawyers.
So at our firm, at Levin Nabanian Trial Lawyers, we handle all matters of workers' compensation, personal injury, and employment disputes, wrongful termination matters, and things like that. We were able to help Mr. Reed out with his workers' compensation case. Unfortunately, workers' compensation injury can be very stressful, intense situation. And at Levin Nabanian, we try to get you the most benefit we can of the law, while also easing the stress and anxiety that comes along with that situation, and getting you back on your feet. My partner, Mr. Nabanian, he handles the personal injury sides, and I'll let him take it from there.
And just like all injured employees out there, anybody else who gets injured as a result of somebody else's negligence has rights, and the rights that they need to protect immediately. And they should do that by calling Levin and Nabanian Trial Lawyers and letting us help ease that tension off of you and get you the result you deserve, while also making sure that you get better in the progress. So we're here for you, folks.
Levin and Nabanian Trial Lawyers is the best company for you to get a hold of when you're injured or have a personal injury. So give them a call at
213-232-4848. 213-232-4848. Thank
And
you.
let them handle the stress for you while you recover at home. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Hi, my name is Ted Durden, and I want to take a moment to talk to you about trust, and I trust churchandlaw.com. When it comes to workers' compensation and employment law, you can trust churchandlaw.com. If you ever need legal advice you can rely on, it's churchandlaw.com. Black and white, no gray, churchandlaw.com. 818-230-3110. churchandlaw.com. A law firm you can trust and count on.
Welcome back to the Voice of Reason and our guest, Dr. Chen. I want to, we've talked a lot about the virus, we've talked a lot about the issues, the economic issues and so forth. America will whip this virus, not just America, the world, because the world is coming together to fight this virus and get rid of it, find treatments for it, and find a vaccine for it, test it, get it out there, so that way it has a minimal impact. I want to dive into a little bit about the human rights violations and the government, we'll call it the government, it's a Communist Party, but the government of China, and how America should go forward, or how the American people, we can't tell the government in America what to do either, right? Because we got a bunch of hypocrites and liars in the government here too.
But you can vote.
Yeah, you can vote, exactly.
Absolutely.
Well, that's why I'm running for office, is that realistically, the human rights violations and the totalitarian and the complete lack of respect of human life in China by the Chinese government party, kind of enlighten our listeners to that a little bit. What is it really like living in China as a commoner, just as an average, person?
Chinese citizen, right?
A Chinese
As a
citizen.
Chinese citizen, number one, they're very, very brainwashed. Like everything they taught there was taught by the government. And
Right.
we just mentioned in Beijing and Shanghai, it seems like it's much better than Wuhan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons is that Wuhan cities, the people there, they are the most brainwashed in the whole China. And the government is the worst in caring about the human rights, because Wuhan was notorious for the persecution towards Falun Gong. They are a media are specialized in creating all kinds of propaganda, demonizing Falun Gong, the meditation group. And they also created all kinds of torture methods to to make Falun Gong give up their belief. And the people in Wuhan have a long history of being brainwashed. That's why they allowed this to happen in China. And I have a relative living in Shanghai, and he told me when the coronavirus outbreak, when the news first came out in Shanghai, everyone on the bus, they start to wear facial masks. But the same day in Wuhan, the center of the epidemic, nobody wore face masks. That's just the difference between being brainwashed or less brainwashed. People in Shanghai is more international, right? They are more able to use VPNs to bypass Great Firewall to figure out what's happening. They can probably explore something, from a foreign media, figure out, okay, it's really bad in Wuhan.
Right.
But people in Wuhan, they are so brainwashed. They believed everything the government told them. They thought it's okay, it's not going to be worse than SARS. And so they are very brainwashed, number one, and then they have no freedom of expression. We talk about the whistleblowers. They were punished by the authority of Wuhan, and that's why so many people got affected later. And I mentioned the doctor, she just had an interview in mid-March, and she disappeared. And being disappeared is very typical. If you say something, if I do this in China, if I say what to say now in China, I would disappear within 1 hour. Okay. Police can just remove me directly, and nobody would know what happened to me. And living in China means the government do not care about whether you die or not die. I remember one of my colleagues said, "Oh, China did such a great job controlling coronavirus," and I really wanted to reply to him you really should learn from North Korea. North Korea had 0 confirmed case because they just kill everyone who was confirmed.
Yeah. Buried in the backyard. There's no census over there. They don't count people. So it's okay, 50,000 die. Nobody misses them.
Well, let me ask you a question. When you were talking about people in the Wuhan province being so brainwashed, is it that they don't have access to technology like, say, they do in Shanghai as far as the internet is concerned? I know it's very still government controlled, but they don't have access to any information outside of what the government tells them?
They have less access, number one, because because the long history, the government, it's just like accumulative, right? In Shanghai, because more international and they are more exposed to this. People, there are more people, more dissidents, more people risk their lives to tell others, you have to bypass the Great Firewall. Maybe in Wuhan, there are less people telling each other, and maybe they traditionally more believe in the government. And it just takes time. But I think after this coronavirus thing, people in Wuhan would be very awakened by this because they got the lesson from this.
Well, they got a lesson, but just like in Iran, I believe Iran is underreported as well.
Definitely.
Of exactly what's happening there, of actual confirmed cases and also deaths. I'm reading constantly, about the death rates over there, and it's the same thing. It's massively underreported. So are they going to learn a lesson, or are they learning the lesson of the Communist Party of China's strong arm, meaning we don't care. If you stand up against it, you're going to die one way or the other. You're going to die from the virus, or you're going to die from us. It doesn't make any difference to us. Because when you have a population of 1.5 billion people, and you have a Communist Party of the elite of 90,000 that are running it, and they can make people, as you're eloquently saying, disappear, which means you're dead. You just don't know how they died, and you don't know where they're buried. Okay, that has a horrible effect. Here in America, if your adult child disappears, your parent disappears, your kid disappears, we go nuts.
We sure do.
Because we want the body, even if they're dead, we want the body returned so we can bury the body, put it to rest. If somebody just disappears, it's a horrible effect. But in China, it's kind of normal.
And on that note, I think we have a caller.
Do we? Yes, hi, this is Mark. You're welcome to the Voice of Reason.
Hello, caller.
Well, they didn't give you the additional 10 minutes. Cut off at 8 o'clock.
No, we got it cut off at 8 o'clock?
Yeah.
Okay.
Keep going, because we can always see it on the tape.
Okay, I recognize you, Mike. Did you have a question or no?
No, that was all.
That
was it.
Okay, Mike.
Just want to let you know.
Okay.
Take care.
Thanks.
That's all right. It's taped, so people who watch it later will watch it. Actually, on your last visit here, we had over 1,000 watchers.
That's
Yeah,
right.
so it was very good. But the psychological effect that's taken place, you're talking thousands of years in China. And President Xi is really no different than past dictators of China. He's just as brutal. He is controlled by the military. He's controlled by elements there that he doesn't have the lateral movement that most people think. And I always say that we put our morals, our perspectives in other people, and we expect them to respond that way. And in truth and reality, we really don't know. The average American has no concept of what's happening in China.
That's why it's so dangerous for us to move the medical supply chain to China and to collaborate with Chinese researchers.
From China.
We have to move the medical supply chain back to the U.S. because they're not our friends. They can use this to threaten us at any time. Because
Absolutely.
if they don't care about their own people, why should they care about the life of Americans? And at the same time, the U.S. government, we have been sponsoring many research projects with the Chinese scientists.
Right.
And you have to remember, all Chinese scientists, they do research, and everything was done for the Chinese government, for the Communist Party. They get all the results, and as a matter of fact, the Wuhan coronavirus, right, the research down there, we have a lot of conspiracy theories. Maybe it was a leak from the lab. That lab collaborated with Americans. At the beginning, the Obama time.
One of the universities.
In North Carolina, Obama's time, the NIH sponsored their research. Of course, they stopped in 2013 after people realized this is really dangerous.
Right.
But we still have many scientists who are so naive about China, they have been speaking for Xi Zhenli in Wuhan, defending the Wuhan the labs in Wuhan, say, they're doing a great job. It's not a leak from the lab. I mean, they are just very naive by collaborating with these Chinese scientists. They didn't realize.
Well, how much is it naivety versus total terror, fear that's been inbred genetically in them, that if they stand up to it, they disappear, because the 3 doctors that talked about it died and disappeared. You know, it is in there. It's just common knowledge within the Chinese people that if you stand up against the Communist Party of China, you'll disappear.
It is, but when many people realize that, when everyone speak out, like that the individual risk is much smaller. Like when we already see like 8 doctors spoke, right, for this. Like that was quite shocking to me, because this is unbelievable. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, like you see like the whole nation, maybe 0 doctor spoke out. But I think this really it's just opening the gate of being awakened, Chinese being awakened.
Well, that's what I think. On that note, we're going to go to our last advertisement, and then we'll have about 8 minutes left on the show. We'll wrap it up.
My erstwhile opponent says I don't accept debate invitations. I accept the League of Women Voters invitation.
The League of Women Voters LA chapter was the one who invited him to the 5 debates with the Battered Women's Organization, with a synagogue, 2 churches, and the American Legion. And he turned down them all flat with the League of Women Voters. Welcome back to the Voice of Reason. You know, we in America have I know that the dictatorships in other countries will always call America arrogant. And we come across as being arrogant because we put our perspectives onto other people. And we really don't. The average American has no clue what it's like to live in other countries. And when you look at Pakistan, you look at India, and you talk to the individuals that come from there, you talk to Chinese individuals that come to America, and I've talked to quite a few, and even from Africa, different regions in Africa. It's actually horrifying. But it's normal for them. And they're not horrified by it. They're very grateful to come to America, and they're happy to live without that fear. And the only way that I can equate that is that I have a mountain home. And I go up there, and one time I went up there for 6 weeks because I was remodeling the kitchen area. And so I was there for 6 weeks. Living in the city here, we're used to hearing, the police, sirens. We're hearing the helicopter flying over. We're used to hearing different noises and stuff. And we take it for granted.
Right.
When I was up at the mountain house, it was in Yosemite National Park, so dead quiet. You can't see your hand in front of your face. It gets so dark. But when I came back, those noises create an emotional response inside of you automatically. It's like to a parent, you hear a child scream. A parent automatically, their senses go up. You have kids, you know that. And you can recognize your own kid's scream. And your senses, you're alert, you go. I can't imagine what it would be like to be an average citizen in China, to be honest with you.
I have to say, an average citizen in China, since baby time, they start to be brainwashed. I remember when I was very, very young, when I was 3 or 4 years old, I already was told, the Communist Party loves you more than your parents do. So you have to devote yourself to the Communist Party.
Sounds like Hillary Clinton here.
Well, that's exactly what we were taught. Like when the Communist Party leader died, everyone should feel sad. You should feel even worse than your parents died. I remember my parents, they had to live separately in 2 cities for 10 years because the party assigned them to different provinces to work. They can only live together for a couple of weeks per year. And my mom raised us alone. And I thought that was normal. I saw because everyone lived like that. Until I came to the U.S., I was so surprised that people live together. Yeah. I mean, people would work remote so that the family can be together. I didn't realize that husband and wives are supposed to live together, because I saw wherever the government assigned them to work, they should live separately, because that's how my parents lived for 10 years. I saw many of their colleagues lived like that. I thought it was normal. I didn't realize it was true. People should live together.
At what age did you come to America?
I came here when I was 21 years old.
21 years old.
Okay.
I was so shocked. And what shocked me the most, people smile at strangers. Because when I was in China, nobody smiled to strangers, because you were always alerted like those strangers may do something bad to harm you. They may report you to the police if you say something wrong. It's like for decades. And I remember the first time I went back to China to visit my parents, it was like in 1996 or something. I smiled at like airport to the staff there. Everyone thought I was crazy because why do you smile at strangers?
Thought you were crazy.
You're insane.
Wow.
It's like, what do you think like was normal, like a human relation in Chinese and everyday Chinese? They didn't realize that this is how human beings should live. You should live without fear.
Mm-hmm.
You should live with love with your parents, with love with your friends or strangers. They are supposed to be your friends, like they're not your enemies by default. But I thought that's probably the case for all communist countries, right? Mm-hmm. Like nobody smiled at strangers. Like I heard all of this from every other communist country.
I find that very interesting because of the fact that there are certain cities, Shanghai, Beijing, and even those provinces where the casinos are, that they rely on tourism and strangers for the economy. So you mean even in situations like that, there would not be a smile greeting a tourist hello or anything like that?
Oh, they will do that. That's a business. Okay.
Oh, okay. All right. That's business. I got you. Okay.
That's like the guys here in America. They think that the bartender or the waitress that's smiling at them, but he likes me. She likes me. No, that's just business.
Yeah. Just want your money.
You're trained to do it.
Just want your money.
Like you say, it's a monkey training. It's like, hi, how are you? I hate you. But I watched a video, and it actually goes into the seriousness of what the mentality. I watched a video of a woman. She had 2 pet dogs, and in China they eat dog, and that's a common thing. And she had 2 pet dogs.
Not a common thing, okay.
Not a common thing, bats and rats and everything else. But anyways, she had 2 pet dogs for her family, and the dogs disappeared and they got eaten, and they refused to ever have a pet dog again. Because of that, she said they loved the dogs. They were their pets. And it's just devastating that the common things that Americans take for granted, that it's totally different in China. And the American people believe that China is this developed country, that it's beautiful. You can go there on tourism and you see the best of the best, but you don't see into the back room.
Well, I want to mention that we all know like China had this one-child policy for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're talking about like billions of babies went through abortion.
Yes.
We're talking about regime who do not cherish human life. Okay, then they will not cherish any animal's life. Animal torture in China is just it's part of brainwash. Since you were baby, I was raised in China. I thought abortion was normal until I came to the U.S. Because every family had to go through this, right? Every family had to go through forced abortion if you have a second child. Right. I thought it was normal. And children growing up, they saw the torture animals, kill animals. They thought it was normal. They didn't realize it was such a bad thing to kill animals, to torture something. It's all part of the brainwash. When we talk about brainwash, it's not like they torture you, brainwash you, force you to. It's like from the education, from the day one education. Mm-hmm. They give you this idea, Communist Party is, offer you salvation. It saves the whole world. It's more better than your parents. They taught you life is not important. You can kill a baby, you can kill a dog, you can make them feel bad. We were taught all these were normal. Until I came to the U.S., I realized, no, this is a problem. But you see, for all Chinese, every Chinese coming to the U.S., it's opportunity for us to be awakened to all this new, a normal human life. Of course, some Chinese, they refuse to. They still, isolate them into their little bubble of they only read news from communist China. They don't want to read the Epoch Times. They don't want to read anything else. They don't want to talk with people like me. They want to live in their bubble. But many Chinese, they would like to open up, to hear, what do you tell them? Right. I mean, I thank very much my American friends. They told me so much after I came. They told me about Tiananmen massacre. I learned from them how normal human life should be. So please do this to other Chinese you encountered in your daily life. Don't let them to come to brainwash you. You have to awake them from the brainwash in China?
Well, it's more of traumatic exposure to inhumane activity. You know, I train animals. I train primates, large cats. I train horses. It's called sensitizing and desensitizing an animal.
Right.
Human beings are no different. We're considered animals. We're an animal. We're a higher hierarchy in the animal tree, and you can desensitize and sensitize any creature to what can be and what isn't normal. And the Chinese regime has had thousands of years of this kind of behavior. So I want to thank you for coming on again. I'm very interested. I'm a people person. I love digging into different cultures, traditions, and so forth. I still want you to come back again because I think there's so much more that needs to be talked about. Because as when 9/11 happened, everybody got scared to death of Muslims. You know, they thought every Muslim was creeping around the corner to kill them. Right. And now everybody's going to look at Asians, and they don't know the difference between Japanese, Chinese, Korean, South, North. They have no clue. And so they're going to start, wanting to blame. And we need to dispel that.
Right.
Because I know this for a fact. I have a lot of Asian neighbors, and I love them to death. I mean, they're great people. And, but people are interesting and strange sometimes in America. And they're going to look at it and say, you did this. And it's not. It's the Communist Party of China has done this. And I think in the end, it will come out that they did this on purpose.
I think so, too.
And I honestly do believe that. I think it was in their financial interest. It was in their power interest. And because of their human rights violations in the past, they don't care.
Right.
And they're going to do whatever they have to do to be on top. That was their stated goal 3 decades ago, that they wanted to become the economic superpower of the world and control the world. And unfortunately, this administration, I think, stopped them in their tracks. And they're fighting back right now. On that note, I want to thank everybody for tuning in once again. I hope you tune in next week at 7 o'clock Thursday, and we'll have another exciting show. On that note, Ted, take it on home.
And as I said before, be safe out there, maintain social distancing and personal hygiene, and we'll get through this. I applaud Trump for the job that he's doing. He's doing a great job. He's doing a real good service to the American people. And as I always say, ignorance prevails when rational minds sit back and do nothing. Be sure to tune in next week.
Thank you.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Mark Reed and Ted Durden, only on LA Talk Radio.